like this video, and subscribe to our channel to witness the world's most epic comebacks. What if the person everyone dismisses as an amateur is actually the hidden key to a multi-billion-dollar empire? Get ready, because the story of Eliza Petrov is about to drop a nuclear bomb on the old world order. Execution on the red carpet. The air on the red carpet in Monaco that fateful evening in 2003 didn't smell of perfume and ocean mist. It reeked of betrayal and old money's cold disdain. For Eliza Petrov, the roar of the crowd was a firing squad, and the flashing cameras were bullets. Standing next to her husband, Alexander Thorne, an ambitious man whose love had long faded into a transactional shadow, she was being publicly executed. The Thorne family, old titans of the East Coast shipping industry, were systematically dismantling her dignity for the world to see. They saw her as nothing but a common stone they couldn't polish into the diamond they truly wanted. Their plan was simple: discard her. But what they and the entire world were about to learn was this: Eliza was not a stone. She was the cornerstone of an empire they never even knew existed. The gilded cage, the atmosphere in the Thornes' penthouse in Miami, overlooking the vast, dark Atlantic, was thin and artificial, a chill that had nothing to do with the cool December air. It was the perpetual frost of judgment, emanating from the matriarch, Eleanor Thorne. Eliza felt it in her bones as she adjusted the simple, midnight blue silk of her dress. She had designed the gown herself. Architecture was her true passion and profession, a world of clean lines, structural integrity, and purpose. She'd tried to translate those principles into her design. Elegant, restrained, strong. But in the Thorne world, restrained was just another word for insufficient. "Is that what you're wearing?" Eliza turned. Alexander stood in the doorway of their suite, impeccable in a custom Savile Row tuxedo. His dark hair was perfect, but a familiar tension pulled at his jaw. He wasn't looking at her. He was assessing her, scanning the dress like a building inspector, searching for a code violation. "I designed it," Eliza said, a flicker of pride she immediately regretted. Pride was not currency the Thornes valued from her. "I realize that," he replied, his words sharper than a dagger. "It's simple. Serafina Vance is wearing a bespoke Chanel tonight. The pre-gala press is already calling it the look of the decade." Eliza's heart did a slow, painful flip. Serafina Vance, of course. The woman Eleanor had always desired as a daughter-in-law, a woman whose lineage was as ancient and storied as theirs, whose family owned half of Manhattan's banking sector. Serafina was everything Eliza was not. "My goal wasn't to be the look of the decade," Eliza retorted, keeping her voice steady. "It's a charity gala, Alex. We're here to support the Children's Literacy Foundation." "We are here to be seen," he corrected her sharply. "We are here to remind people that the Thorne name still means something, especially now." The unspoken words hung between them. The Thorne Corporation, a legacy in luxury maritime logistics, was bleeding money. Whispers in the financial columns had become worried murmurs. A series of risky offshore investments had gone south, and Alexander, the heir, was under immense pressure to project an image of unshakable stability, an image his simple wife apparently tarnished. "Mother is waiting downstairs," he said, turning away. "Don't be late. And for heaven's sake, put on the Thorne sapphires. At least try to look the part." He left without another word. Eliza walked to the velvet-lined jewelry case. Nestled inside, on a bed of white silk, was the infamous Thorne necklace. It was a monstrous, breathtaking piece, a cascade of Himalayan blue sapphires and brilliant cut diamonds. It was also heavy, cold, and felt less like a gift and more like a yoke. She had worn it once at her wedding and felt like an imposter. With a sigh, she lifted the weighty piece and clasped it around her neck. The stones were ice cold against her skin. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. The simple elegance of her gown was now overwhelmed by the necklace's ostentatious shine. The woman in the mirror looked trapped, a walking billboard for a dynasty that despised her. She was Eliza Thorne, a name that felt more like a brand than an identity. The girl she used to be, Anna Petrova, the determined architecture student who paid her tuition by waitressing, felt like a ghost from another life. Downstairs, the cold intensified. Eleanor Thorne stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a specter in silver Oscar de la Renta, her posture as rigid as the steel beams of the skyscraper they lived in. She turned as Eliza descended the marble staircase, her eyes the color of faded old money, performing the same dismissive scan Alexander had. "You decided to wear the necklace," Eleanor said, her voice a dry silk whisper. "A wise choice. It distracts from the austerity of the dress." "Hello, Eleanor," Eliza said, forcing a small smile. "Let's be clear about tonight, Eliza," the older woman continued, ignoring the greeting. "The photographers will be out in force. You will smile. You will stay half a step behind Alexander. When questions are directed to you, you will defer to him. Your only job is to be a silent, beautiful accessory. Can you do that?" The condescension was so thick, Eliza felt she could choke on it. This was her life, a set of instructions on how to be invisible, how to shrink to fit the impossibly small box they had built for her. "I understand," Eliza murmured. "Good," Eleanor said, turning back to the window. "Because the Thorne legacy is fragile right now. We cannot afford a single misstep." As the three descended in the silent elevator towards the waiting town car, Eliza felt the weight of the sapphires pressing down on her, each stone a reminder of her failure to belong. She caught her reflection in the polished brass of the elevator doors. The woman staring back looked terrified, and for the first time, Eliza didn't blame her. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the core, that tonight was going to be more than just another uncomfortable social event. It was going to be an ordeal. The crucifixion. The limousine pulled to the foot of the grand steps of the Monaco Opera House. The instant the door opened, a wall of sound and light hit them. The roar of the crowd, the staccato bursts of hundreds of flashes, the shouted questions from the press. It was a sensory assault designed to overwhelm. Alexander stepped out first, a confident smile plastered on his face. He was in his element. He turned and offered a hand to his mother, who emerged with the majestic grace of a queen. Then he turned to Eliza. His hand was cold and impersonal, his grasp a superficial gesture. As Eliza stepped onto the luxurious red carpet, the flashes seemed to intensify. She felt thousands of eyes on her, dissecting her, judging her. The sapphire dress, which had felt so right in her apartment, now felt desperately simple compared to the haute couture gowns that looked like walking works of art. The thorn sapphires around her neck felt like a neon sign broadcasting her inadequacy. "Alexander! Eleanor! Over here!" the photographers yelled. The thorns moved with practiced ease, posing, turning, smiling. Eliza tried to follow Eleanor's instructions, staying half a step behind Alexander, her smile feeling like a cheap mask. A reporter from the New York Business Chronicle, a woman with a notoriously sharp pen named Brenda Hill, thrust her microphone forward. "Alexander, another stunning gala. How is the Thorne Corporation continuing to weather the current market uncertainties with such confidence?" "Confidence is in our DNA," Alexander said smoothly, his voice ringing with false bravado. "We build on foundations of stone, not sand. We've seen a dozen market cycles. This is no different." "And your charming wife," Brenda said, her eyes sharp as a hawk, turning to Eliza. "Eliza." That's a very minimalist design for the opera gala. A bold statement. Who are you wearing? The question was a baited hook. Eliza knew it. To say, I designed it myself, would sound arrogant and amateur. Lying wasn't an option. It's a personal design, Eliza said quietly, her voice barely audible over the din. Before she could say more, Eleanor glided forward, her smile as sharp as broken glass. My daughter-in-law has a charming affinity for simplicity. She believes true elegance needn't shout. The words sounded like a compliment, but the delivery was a masterclass in condescension. Charming affinity. Simplicity. In this context, they were insults, painting Eliza as a naive, provincial girl who simply didn't understand the rules of their world. The other reporters scribbled furiously. The temperature in the air dropped several degrees as a long, impossibly sleek white Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up behind them. The door opened, and Serafina Vance stepped out in her Chanel gown. It was a spectacular creation. Crimson silk and hand-stitched gold thread. A dress that didn't just enter a room, it conquered it. She looked like a goddess of fire and wealth. Serafina! The photographers roared, their attention instantly shifting. Serafina smiled, a dazzling, confident grin that reached her eyes. She walked towards them, and the press line parted for her as if by divine command. Eleanor, you are absolutely radiant, Serafina said, air-kissing the matriarch's cheek. And Alexander? So handsome. Her eyes landed on Eliza for a millisecond, a look of such quick disdain it was almost subliminal. She didn't even acknowledge her name. Alexander's strained smile suddenly became genuine. Serafina, you look breathtaking. Chanel was kind enough to send it directly from their Paris atelier, she said, with a casual wave of her hand, as if speaking about the weather. Then came the final, most brutal blow. Brenda Hill, sensing the drama, stepped forward again. Mrs. Thorne! Her voice was loud and clear, directed at Eliza. There are rumors that you haven't fully assimilated into the Thorne lifestyle. Some say you're more comfortable at a drafting table than a society dinner. How do you respond to critics who say you're not the right partner to help lead a legacy brand like Thorne in turbulent times? The question was a dagger, and it twisted. All sound seemed to fade, except the frantic clicking of the cameras. Eliza looked at Alexander, her eyes pleading for him to intervene, to defend her, to say anything. He held her gaze for a minimal instant, and in that moment, she saw everything. His panic, his weakness, his choice. He turned away from her, toward Serafina, and placed a hand lightly on the small of the other woman's back. I think, Alexander said, his voice ringing with false charm, addressing the press but looking at Serafina, that tonight is about charity, not baseless gossip. Thorne is and always will be synonymous with strength and tradition. We are looking to the future. He didn't defend her. He didn't even acknowledge her. He aligned himself, physically and verbally, with Serafina, the embodiment of the strength and tradition he spoke of. He had left his wife alone, exposed, and humiliated on the red carpet. The cameras swiveled to Eliza like a firing squad. The flashes were blinding, capturing the sheen of unshed tears in her eyes, the way her hand trembled as she gripped her small purse. Eleanor watched with a look of cold victory. Serafina offered a small, pitying smile. In that moment, Eliza Thorne ceased to exist. She was only the wife, the outsider, the mistake. The world was watching as she was erased. With what little dignity she had left, she turned, breaking from the frozen tableau of her husband and his referred partner, and walked away from the lights, the cameras, her sapphire dress a solitary, sharp cut of color against the overwhelming blood-red carpet. She was fleeing not just the gala, but the entire life that had just utterly rejected her. Interactive question. Nếu là Eliza, ngay lúc đó, bạn sẽ làm gì với chiếc vòng cổ Sapphire vô giá của nhà Thorne? Hãy bình luận ý kiến của bạn ở phía dưới. The hidden heir. The heavy doors of the opera house closed behind her, muffling the cacophony of the red carpet. The sudden silence was more deafening than the noise. Eliza found herself in a hushed marble hall, the air smelling of floor wax and ancient history. The humiliation burned hotter now in the silence. She leaned against a cool marble column, the cold seeping through the thin silk of her dress. The Thorne sapphires felt like a lead weight, choking her. With trembling fingers, she fumbled with the clasp until it unhooked. She held the ridiculously expensive necklace in her palm. Its weight and value felt obscene. It was the price of her servitude, and she wanted nothing to do with it. Her phone vibrated in her clutch. Alexander's name flashed across the screen. She ignored it. It vibrated again. And again. He wasn't calling out of concern. He was calling for damage control. He needed his accessory back in place. With a surge of defiance, Eliza's fingers closed around the necklace. She spotted a decorative stone urn near the entrance, filled with cigarette sand. Without a second thought, she walked over and dropped the legendary Thorne sapphires into the sand, burying them with a dismissive swipe of her hand. It was a small act of rebellion, but it felt monumental. It was the first decision she had made for herself in years. She exited the doors and stepped out into the cool night air, bypassing the red carpet and walking out onto the street. The lights of the city blurred through her tears. She had no destination. She just walked, the click of her heels on the pavement a frantic, lonely rhythm. After walking what felt like miles, her feet throbbing in her expensive, unsuitable heels, she found herself in a small, quiet park. She sat on a cold iron bench, the sounds of the city now a distant hum. It was over. The marriage, the pretense, the endless effort to try and earn a love that was never truly hers. As she sat there, a long, impossibly sleek black sedan, a Maybach S-Class, pulled up to the curb by the park. It was so silent it seemed to have materialized from the shadows. The back window slid down, revealing a man in a dark suit. He was not the driver. He had a stern, weathered face, graying at the temples, and eyes that seemed to see everything. "Anna Petrova?" he asked. His voice was deep, with a slight, unmistakable Eastern European accent. The sound of her maiden name was a shock. No one had called her that in years. Instinctively, she drew back, clutching her purse. "Who are you?" "My name is Mikhail," the man said, his expression unreadable. "I am your father's head of security. He has sent me to bring you in." Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. "My father?" she whispered. "My father is dead. He died years ago." She had been 10 years old when she lost him in a tragic industrial accident, or so her mother had always told her. Her mother, who had passed away just before Eliza went to college, had raised her alone, always struggling, always telling Eliza that they only had each other. Mikhail's face softened with something that looked like pity. "Your father, Konstantin Volkov, is very much alive. He has been watching you from a distance, honoring your mother's wishes. But tonight, this evening, he decided that was no longer tenable. He is waiting for you. Please, get in the car." Eliza's mind reeled. Konstantin Volkov. The name was thunder. It was not a common name. It belonged to a ghost, a legend in the world of global commerce. Konstantin Volkov was the press-shunning, reclusive founder and CEO of Volkov Global Logistics, a sprawling, multi-billion-dollar empire that controlled shipping routes, rare earth mineral mines, and cutting-edge technology firms. He was a phantom, a man whose photo hadn't been published in 2 decades. He was rumored to be ruthless, brilliant, and utterly solitary. And he was her father. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "It's impossible. It's a mistake." "There is no mistake," Mikhail said softly. He held up a small, worn photograph. It showed a younger man with intense, dark eyes, holding a little girl with bright, curious eyes and a missing front tooth. The girl was holding a meticulously constructed model of a bridge made from popsicle sticks. Eliza gasped. She remembered that day. She remembered that bridge. She had a faded copy of that exact photo in a box beneath her bed. The world tilted on its axis. Her entire life, her entire history, was a lie. Her father wasn't a dead factory worker. He was Konstantin Volkov. Stunned, she stood up. The choice was between sitting on a cold park bench, a disgraced socialite with nowhere to go, or getting into a car that promised either the beginning of a cruel joke or the end of the life she knew. She looked into Mikhail's steady, patient eyes. For the first time all night, she felt a glimmer of something other than despair. It was a terrifying, exhilarating flash of hope. She walked to the car and got in. The door closed with a soft, solid thud, sealing her off from the world of the thorns and plunging her into an unknown future. The revelation, they drove to a private airfield on the outskirts of the city, where a sleek Gulfstream G700S jet waited on the tarmac, its engines quietly humming. The name Volkov was etched powerfully on its tail. Mikhail led her up the stairs into an interior that looked less like a plane and more like a minimalist, airborne apartment. Everything was muted grays, polished chrome, and dark wood. At the far end of the cabin, in a large leather club chair, a man was seated, looking out the window at the glittering city lights. He turned as she approached. It was him. Older, of course. His dark hair was now streaked with silver, and lines of stress and concentration were etched around his eyes and mouth. But the eyes were the same, dark, fiercely intelligent, and at that moment, filled with a deep, painful sadness. He was dressed in simple, perfectly tailored dark trousers and a sweater. There was an aura of immense, contained power about him, a stillness that was more imposing than any loud gesture. "Anna," he said. His voice was the same deep rumble of her memories. He used the Russian diminutive of her name, a sound she hadn't heard in 2 decades. "I was told you died," she said, her own voice a choked whisper. Konstantin Volkov stood up. He was a tall man and seemed to fill the cabin. "Your mother, Katerina, wanted a different life for you, a normal life." He gestured vaguely to the opulent surroundings. "Away from me, away from this. When I founded my company, the risks were great. My rivals were not kind men. She feared for you. She took you and disappeared. She made me promise not to interfere unless it was a matter of life and death." "And tonight was a matter of life and death?" Anna asked, a bitter edge to her voice. "Watching your spirit die is a matter of life and death," he answered, his gaze unwavering. "I honored my promise for 25 years. I watched you grow from afar. I saw you earn your architecture degree from the Polytechnic Institute of Madrid, top of your class. I saw you win the Young Scholarship for your sustainable housing design. You were brilliant. You were strong." His voice hardened. "And then I watched you marry that boy, that weak, characterless heir who allowed his mother to chip away at your soul until almost nothing was left. I watched you dim your own light to make them comfortable. Tonight, I saw them try to extinguish it completely. My promise to your mother did not include allowing her daughter to be destroyed." Tears streamed down Anna's face now, hot and silent. He knew. He had seen her. Everything. The triumphs she thought were hers alone. The slow, painful erosion of her spirit she thought no one else noticed. "Why didn't you tell me?" she sobbed. "Why let me believe you were gone?" "It was your mother's dying wish," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. "She made her sister promise to keep the secret. She was proud and terrified of this world. She believed my name would be a curse, a weight that would crush your dreams. She wanted you to build your own life, and you did. You became an architect, Anna. You build things that last. It is in your blood. It is in mine." He stepped closer and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. His touch was hesitant, unfamiliar, but fatherly. "That life, the Thorn life, is over," he said, his tone shifting from emotional to utterly resolute, the voice of a market-moving CEO. "They think you are a nobody. They are about to learn that you are a Volkov, and we do not build on sand. We build on the bones of our enemies." Mikhail approached them. "Sir, we have the final reports. The Thorn Corporation is leveraged to the hilt. They have a $300 million bridge loan due in 72 hours. The creditor is Sterling Finch Capital, and the value of Thorn's stock is too low to secure another round of funding. They are on the brink of total collapse." Anna looked at her father, confused. "What does that have to do with me?" A cold, dangerous smile touched Konstantin Volkov's lips for the first time. "Because, my daughter, 48 hours ago, through a series of shell companies, I purchased Sterling Finch Capital." The implication settled on Anna with the force of a physical blow. Her father not only had the power to save her, he held the entire Thorn legacy in the palm of his hand. "They humiliated you because they saw you as worthless," Konstantin said, his voice now like ice. "They are about to discover your true worth and their own bankruptcy. We are not flying anywhere tonight. We are going back to the city. I have a press conference scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Volkov Tower. The world is about to meet my daughter again. Not as Eliza Thorn, the discarded wife, but as Anna Volkov, the sole heir to my empire." He looked at her, his dark eyes searching hers. "They tried to bury you, Anna. It is time to show them that you are the seed of a forest they cannot comprehend. The new empire." Anna did not sleep. She spent the rest of the night in a penthouse suite in the Volkov Tower that made the Thorn residence feel like a shabby cottage. It was a space of quiet power, with panoramic views of a city she had only experienced from a position of weakness until now. A wardrobe of clothing, perfectly her size, had been curated by an unseen hand. Not a single piece was flashy or ostentatious. They were power suits from Armani, sleek dresses from Heiress, custom coats from Max Mara. The clothes of a woman who ran boardrooms, not decorated them. She chose a charcoal gray suit with defined lines. It felt like armor. When she looked in the mirror, she no longer saw the frightened woman from the red carpet. She saw a flash of her father's steel in her own eyes. At 9:45 a.m., she met Konstantin in his vast minimalist office. The room was dominated by a single, enormous slab of black granite that served as a desk. On it was a single monitor showing the live feed from a dozen financial news channels. Every one of them was buzzing with speculation. Reclusive billionaire Konstantin Volkov to give first public press conference in 20 years. "They expect an acquisition announcement," Konstantin said, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Or perhaps news of my death." He smirked. "They will get something far more interesting." He turned to her. "Are you ready?" Anna took a deep breath. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." A look of immense pride crossed his face. "That is the Volkov way." At 10:00 a.m. Sharp, they walked onto a stage in the Tower Auditorium. The room was packed with hundreds of reporters, the blinding flash of cameras even more intense than at the gala. But this time, it felt different. Anna was not a target. She was part of the force commanding the attention. She stood beside her father at a simple podium, featuring the Volkov logo, a stylized wolf head. Konstantin stepped up to the microphone. The room fell silent. "Good morning," he began, his voice quiet, yet powerful, filling the large space effortlessly. I have not addressed the public in many years. I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Today, however, is an exception. Today is not about business. It is about family. It is about legacy." He paused, letting those words hang in the air. "For many years, the world has believed I have no heir, that the Volkov empire would be dismantled and sold off upon my death. They were wrong. Today, I am here to correct the record and introduce you to the future of this company." He turned and gestured to Anna. "This is my daughter, Anna Volkov. Due to private family matters, she has lived her life out of the public eye. But that time is over. Effective immediately, she will take a position on the board of Volkov Global Logistics as vice president. And upon my retirement, she, and she alone, will be my successor." A wave of shock rippled through the auditorium. Gasps, frantic typing, whispered exclamations. The reporters were stunned. Anna felt their collective gaze, but it was no longer filled with pity. It was filled with awe, confusion, and a frantic desire to understand. But Konstantin was not finished. He held up a hand for silence. "That is my first announcement," he said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "The second is a small piece of business news. As of 3 days ago, Volkov Global acquired a controlling stake in the financial firm, Sterling Finch Capital. As our first commercial act, we have reviewed their portfolio. The $300 million bridge loan, extended to the Thorn Corporation, has been deemed an unacceptable risk. We are calling in that loan." He stressed the words. "Effective immediately. They have until the close of business tomorrow to pay it in full." If the first announcement was a shockwave, this was a nuclear detonation. Every reporter in the room understood the implication. Calling in a loan of that size, without warning, was a death sentence. The Thorn Corporation was finished. Konstantin looked directly into the main camera, as if speaking to the Thorns themselves. "Volkov Global has a zero-tolerance policy for poor character and bad investments. We believe the management of the Thorn Corporation has demonstrated a catastrophic failure in both. We will not finance their collapse." Then he looked at Anna. His expression softened. "My daughter will be handling the restructuring of our new acquisitions. I have full confidence in her vision and integrity, qualities that are apparently in short supply elsewhere." He then turned and walked off the stage, leaving Anna at the podium. This was her moment, her test. Anna stepped forward, her heart pounding against her ribs. She looked at the sea of faces, the flashing lights, and thought of the red carpet. She thought of Alexander's betrayal and Eleanor's cruelty. They had tried to make her small, but standing here, backed by the power of the Volkov name, she had never felt bigger. "My father has laid out the business case," she said, her voice clear and firm, betraying none of her inner turmoil. "But let me be clear on the philosophy. The future of Volkov Global will not only be about profit. It will be about building things of value, things with integrity. We will invest in sustainable technology, ethical practices, and visionary architecture that serves communities, not just the blind greed of a few. We will build a legacy, not just a balance sheet." "Thank you. I will not be taking questions at this time." With that, she turned and followed her father off the stage, leaving a room in absolute chaos. The spotlight that had been used to humiliate her was now illuminating her ascent. The world had just witnessed the fall of one dynasty and the spectacular, unexpected birth of another. Don't forget to click the notification bell to catch our next story. The reckoning, the fall, was not a gentle descent. It was a detonation. Inside the Thorn penthouse, the morning had begun with its usual sterile ritual. The news channel was on, a low hum in the background, as they awaited the highly publicized press conference of the recluse, Konstantin Volkov. "He'll probably announce he's finally dying," Eleanor commented dryly. The market will welcome the boost. A corporate breakup of that magnitude will create opportunities. Alexander grunted in agreement, his mind on the looming deadline of their bridge loan. The press conference was distraction. Then, Konstantin Volkov appeared on screen. When he started talking about family and legacy, Eleanor arched a perfectly sculpted brow. When he said the word daughter, Alexander finally looked up from his tablet. A flicker of mild curiosity in his eyes, and then the camera panned to the woman standing next to him. For one frozen second, Alexander's brain could not process the image. It was Eliza, but it wasn't. The woman on the screen wore a charcoal gray suit that looked like armor. Her posture was rigid, and her eyes, staring out at the world's press, held a steeliness he had never seen before. This was not the meek, malleable wife he had left alone on the red carpet. "Anna," Alexander breathed. The word was a puff of air. Eleanor's teacup rattled against her saucer. Her face, a carefully maintained mask of icy control, seemed to shatter. What is this joke?" she whispered. But it was no joke. The name on the podium plaque was clear. Anna Volkov, as Konstantin's words washed over them. Sole heir, my successor, vice president. The reality began to seep into the room. Cold and toxic, the air grew thin, hard to breathe. This was not just a shock. It was a fundamental violation of the laws of their universe. Eliza, their provincial problem, their simple, inadequate Eliza, was the secret princess of a kingdom infinitely more powerful than their own. Then came the second announcement. The casual mention of Volkov Global acquiring Sterling Finch Capital, his clinical assessment of the Thorn Corporation as an unacceptable risk, and the final, brutal declaration. He was calling in the loan. The champagne flute in Eleanor's hand, forgotten until that moment, slipped from her trembling fingers. It didn't just drop. It shattered on the marble floor. The sound as sharp and violent as a gunshot in the silent, horrified room. "He's ruined us," Alexander said, his voice hollow. He looked at the screen where Anna was now speaking, her voice calm and clear, a voice he had interrupted so often. She was speaking of vision and integrity, and every word felt like a judgment. The phone started then. First Alexander's, then Eleanor's, then the landline on the console table. They didn't ring. They screamed. A cacophony of incoming calls from board members, investors, bankers, and the howling press. The sound was a death knell, an electronic chorus announcing the end of their dynasty. On the television, the stock ticker for Thorn Corp was a blinking line of blood red, plunging into an abyss. "Call her!" Eleanor shrieked, her voice stripped of all its cultivated grace, now a raw, rough thing. She gripped Alexander's arm, her nails digging into the fine wool of his suit. "Call your wife. Get on your knees. Apologize. Beg. Grovel. Do you understand me, Alexander? You will fix this." Alexander, fumbling with his phone like a clumsy teenager, his hands shaking too hard to use the screen, finally managed to find Anna's contact. He pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, and then clicked. Her crisp, professional voice filled the silence. "You have reached Anna Volkov. Please leave a message. Anna Volkov." She had already shed his surname like dead skin. The formal, impersonal greeting was a wall he could not climb. He tried again. Voicemail. He began to type a series of frantic, incoherent texts, his thumb slipping on the glass. "Anya, we have to talk. Last night was a terrible mistake. I am so sorry. It was my mother. You know how she is. She pressured me. I love you. You have to believe me. You can't do this. My whole family's legacy is at stake. Please, Anya, don't let him. I'll do anything. I'll leave my mother. We can go away. Just call me." He stared at the screen, waiting. The word "delivered" appeared beneath each message. A moment later, it was replaced by the word read. Then, nothing. Her silence was more damning than any angry response. It was the silence of total indifference. The finality. The final act of their corporate execution was swift. That afternoon, a team of 4 attorneys from the newly acquired Volkov firm arrived at the Thorn Corporation headquarters. They moved through the office of terrified murmurs with the unsettling calm of undertakers. They did not threaten or shout. They simply presented the documentation to Alexander in the main boardroom, the same room where his great-grandfather's portrait hung on the wall. The documents were unassailable. Liquidation proceedings would begin at dawn. Desperate, broken, and out of other recourse, Alexander drove to the only place he knew he had to go. He left his car with an astonished valet and entered the lobby of the Volkov Tower. It was like stepping into a cathedral of power, all soaring glass and polished black granite. The air was cool and still. He, who had always been the one to make others wait, was now the supplicant. He said he approached the main security desk. His voice cracked as he asked to see Anna Volkov. The guard, a man built like a monument, did not even blink. He spoke quietly into a receiver and said, "Please wait here, Mr. Thorn." Alexander waited. For an hour, he stood in the center of that immense lobby, a public spectacle of ruin. Businessmen and women in sharp suits strode past, their eyes glancing at him with pity and morbid curiosity. He was a ghost at the party, a living relic of a fallen house. Finally, it was not Anna who descended in the silent, gleaming elevator. It was Mikhail, her father's head of security, who approached with a measured, deliberate step. His face was a stone mask. "Mr. Thorn," Mikhail said, his voice neutral. "Mrs. Volkov is in a board meeting and will be for the remainder of the evening. She will not be disturbed." "Please," Alexander pleaded, his pride gone. "Just tell her I'm here. I need to speak to her. 5 minutes." "That will not be possible," Mikhail stated. His tone brooked no argument. "However, she asked me to give you this." He handed Alexander a simple manila envelope. Alexander's name was written on it, in a sharp, unfamiliar script he vaguely recognized as Eliza's. With trembling hands, he tore it open. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a divorce filing, citing irreconcilable differences. Her signature, clear and confident at the bottom, read Anna Volkov. The second was a restraining order, legally barring him from her home or place of work, citing emotional distress and public harassment. Alexander looked at the cold black ink. The world narrowed down to the stark finality of the words on the page. He was no longer her husband. He was a threat. He looked up at the monolithic tower, a fortress of glass and steel reaching into the sky. Anna was up there, in a world he could no longer reach, a world where she was powerful and he was nothing. The architect's vision. At that very moment, Anna was sitting at a long, polished obsidian table, 30 floors above him. She was presenting her initial analysis of a deep-sea mining project proposal. "While the projected return is high," she was saying, her voice steady, "the environmental impact study is inadequate. It fails to account for the disruption to local marine ecosystems. The potential for long-term brand damage outweighs the short-term profit. I recommend we discard it and instead redirect the investment into the development of the new 5-volt battery technology our lab in Stuttgart is pioneering. It is a more sustainable and ultimately more profitable long-term play." The seasoned executives around the table, men who had initially viewed her as their boss's pet project, listened intently. They exchanged impressed glances. Her insights were sharp, her vision clear, her principles unshakable. She wasn't just the heir, she was an asset. 3 months passed. The Thorn name had faded into a whisper of a bygone era. It became a cautionary tale told in business schools, a case study on the lethal combination of arrogance and fragility. Alexander and Eleanor, stripped of their surnames' power and their fortune, retreated into a life of bitter obscurity. The name on everyone's lips was now Volkov, specifically Anna Volkov. Her ascent had been meteoric, yet solidly based. She was not the ceremonial vice president many had initially assumed. Her mind, trained to see flaws in a blueprint, was uniquely suited to spotting weaknesses in a business portfolio. Her first major initiative was born out of a desire to infuse the cold world of corporate power with the warmth of human purpose. She presented a vision for the Volkov Sustainable Future Foundation, a revolutionary entity that would use the corporation's immense resources not for charity handouts, but for building self-sustaining ecosystems, innovative, eco-friendly housing, community centers powered by renewable energy, and public spaces designed by the people who would use them. Konstantin had listened, his expression unreadable, as she spoke with a passion he hadn't seen since her mother, Katerina, had argued with him about art and poetry decades ago. When she finished, the boardroom was silent. Anna held her breath, ready for opposition. Instead, her father nodded slowly and deliberately. "Build it." His voice resonated with finality. "This is a worthy legacy." The first cornerstone of that legacy was laid in a long-neglected neighborhood in San Diego, where Anna had designed a community hub that was now nearing completion. It was her masterpiece, a building that seemed to breathe, constructed from reclaimed wood and recycled steel, with a sloping green roof that harvested rainwater and solar panels that shone like a promise under the sun. Her relationship with her father, once a 25-year chasm of silence, had begun to feel like a home. The last echo, that sense of peace and purpose, accompanied her on a cool spring evening as she stood on the observation deck of the nearly finished San Diego Community Center. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light over the city. Below, the sound of children's laughter echoed from the new playground, a sound of pure joy in a place where there had been little. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. An unknown number. She usually ignored them, but something made her answer. "Hello?" A silence. Then a hesitant, cracked voice she barely recognized. "Anna?" It was Alexander. The sound of his voice did not elicit anger or pain. It was like hearing a song from a distant, half-forgotten time in her life. I just wanted to say," he stammered, the old suave confidence utterly gone, replaced by the raw edge of defeat. "I saw you on the news, the foundation, the San Diego Center. It's incredible. It's what you were always meant to do." He paused, taking a ragged breath. "You were always designing things, building things. You tried to show me the blueprints for that housing project you won the award for. And I think I was looking at my phone. I was a fool, Anna. I was too small to see how big you were." Anna leaned against the cool, firm presence of the railing. She listened, not to his words, but to the vast, empty space behind them, a space filled with his regret, his weakness, his loss. The woman she used to be would have wept with vindication upon hearing this confession. She would have craved this apology like water in a desert. But the woman she was now simply felt a quiet, profound sense of detachment. "Thank you, Alexander," she said. And she was surprised to find that she meant it. His apology wasn't for her. It was for him, a necessary step in his own diminished life. Her acceptance, if that was what it was just as important for her. It was the quiet, non-slamming close of a door. "I wish you well." She ended the call before he could say more. A quiet step approached from behind. It was Mikhail, holding a dark cashmere coat against the growing night chill. His stern face held a familiar look of paternal vigilance. "Your father is waiting, Miss Volkov," his voice a respectful murmur. "The helicopter is ready to take you to the signing of the Valencia port project." Anna smiled, a genuine, quiet smile, as she slipped her arms into the coat. "Thank you, Mikhail." She cast one last look at the horizon. The lights of Miami no longer mocked her with a life she couldn't have. They were simply lights. Her life, her work, her future. It was here, on the ground, building things that mattered. The spotlight hadn't just shifted. She had seized it, melted it down, and reforged it into a beacon, illuminating a better world designed by herself. The meaningful ending. The story of Anna Volkov is a powerful reminder that our worth is never determined by those who seek to diminish us. It is forged in the fire of our own resilience and defined by the strength we find when we have nothing left to lose. From the depths of public humiliation, she didn't just get up. She rebuilt her entire world, transforming a legacy of cold power into a new empire of purpose and vision. Her journey teaches us that the most beautiful structures are often built upon the foundations of what was broken. Call to action. Have you ever felt underestimated or defined by someone else's opinion? What would you build if you had the chance to rewrite your own story in a place like Las Vegas, London, or Dubai? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. If Anna's incredible transformation from victim to visionary has inspired you, please show your support. Liking this story, sharing it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribing to our channel for more stories of epic comebacks and ultimate empowerment. The Triple Secret. A story of a billionaire's betrayal and a teacher's fierce redemption. Get ready for a story that proves the past never truly stays buried. This is a high-octane drama about a woman who was brutally rejected, raising 3 identical secrets, and the moment she decides to crash a society wedding to demand the truth. Before we reveal this scandalous secret, please hit the like button right now. When you like this video, you tell the algorithm this story is worth sharing, and it helps us bring you more explosive tales of love and betrayal. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. The Golden Invitation. The morning had started like so many others in the life of Sofia Ramirez. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the small kitchen of her home in Austin, Texas, and the laughter of her triplets, 3 miniature orchestras of joy, reverberated through the house. 3 identical pairs of amber eyes reflected the sunlight streaming through the window, and every time she looked at them, she saw the ghost of a man she once loved with everything she had. As she folded school uniforms and packed lunchboxes, a knock at the door froze her instantly. She wasn't expecting visitors. When she opened it, she found a messenger in a black suit, holding a beige envelope with gold detailing, the kind of stationery only the ultra-rich use to announce world-stopping parties. For Ms. Sofia Ramirez, the messenger stated, without even looking up. He handed it over and left. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope. Her heart nearly stopped as she read the name stamped in gold ink. Ethan Stone and Penelope Hayes request the honor of your presence at their sacred union. The world seemed to shrink around her. The floor, once so solid, turned to quicksand. Ethan. That name she had spent a decade trying to bury. The very man who promised her the world beneath a sycamore tree and vanished as if their love were dust. She sat at the table, the invitation shaking in her hands. Her eyes no longer saw the letters. Memories exploded, the scent of his skin, the warmth of the old barn where they exchanged promises, the sweet taste of their first kiss, and then the silence, the abandonment, the humiliation. She never told him the truth. She never had a chance. Ethan's mother, cruel as ice, had thrown her off the ranch and threatened her family. Pregnant, alone, Sofia had to rebuild her life with the strength known only to rejected women. She graduated, became a beloved teacher, and raised 3 beautiful, kind, and vibrant sons. The fruits of a love no one believed in. But now this man wanted her to watch him marry someone else. Why? For revenge? Out of curiosity? Or perhaps to rub it in her face that he was happy without her? Sofia felt the pain slowly morph into something warmer, fiercer. Rage, pride, and a spark of courage. She looked at the triplets playing with toy cars on the living room floor. They have a right to know, she whispered to herself, and he has a duty to look them in the eye. Sofia rose with the same resolve with which she had held her life together for 12 years. She took the envelope from the table and tucked it into her purse. We're going to Dallas, my loves. Mommy has a wedding to attend. Call to action. Welcome to the Narratives and Memoirs channel. First things first, please leave your like. That way, YouTube will know our content is valuable and show it to more people. The night of decisions, that night, Sofia did not sleep. She sat on the living room sofa, wrapped in silence, the dim light of a lamp illuminating the invitation on the table. The city slept outside, but inside her, the past was wide awake, furious, confused, and pulsating. The name Ethan echoed like a forgotten song, painfully familiar once again. In the next room, her 3 sons slept soundly. Liam, Elijah, and Noah, 3 hearts beating outside Sofia's chest. They were identical on the outside, but distinct within. Liam was the most sensitive, Elijah the most curious, and Noah the most mischievous. And none of them knew who their father was. When do I tell them? Will they ever forgive me for not telling them sooner? She whispered into the void, her eyes filled with tears. She had always promised herself she would only reveal the truth when she was certain Ethan posed no emotional danger to the boys. But now, everything was out of control. Going to Dallas was like tearing open a wound that had taken years to heal. Only now, it wasn't just about her. It was about them. The next morning, she packed her bags with a heavy heart. She tried to pretend it was just a little vacation trip. The boys were excited, bouncing all over the house, stuffing toys, cars, and books into their colorful backpacks, laughing, unaware they were about to meet a man who was, biologically, already a part of them. "Where are we going, Mom?" asked Liam, his gaze always gentle. Sophia knelt and pulled all three close. "We're going to see the city where Mom grew up, and maybe reconnect with some people from the past." She took a deep breath. For a moment, she thought of telling them the truth. But how? How to explain a love that turned into abandonment? How to tell them that their dad might not even want them? It wasn't fair to give them hope about a man who might have no heart. "Will there be a pool?" Noah interrupted, laughing. "And ice cream?" Elijah added. Sophia smiled, hiding the tremor in her eyes. "There will be that, and much more, my loves." On the drive toward Dallas, the sky was overcast, as if the universe reflected her feelings. Every mile driven was a step closer to a past Sophia had sworn never to revisit. And she had no idea that by crossing the gates of the Stone family estate, she would not only reveal her own secrets, but also those of the Stones themselves. Secrets that could either turn her life upside down or set her free to forever. The Stone Empire. The Stone Mansion stood atop a hill in Dallas, surrounded by meticulously manicured gardens and protected by high gates and discreet cameras. The empire the family had built over generations was now in the hands of Ethan Stone, the heir who had learned from a young age to hide his feelings and prioritize power. Sitting behind a massive mahogany desk in his office, Ethan stared at a painting on the wall, a portrait of him as a young man next to his late father. He had everything: money, prestige, control of companies, a feared last name. But the look in the photo said more than any speech. There, he still smiled with truth. Today, his smile was pure protocol. On his phone screen, Penelope Hayes was sending anxious messages about party details, vendors, and public relations. The wedding wasn't for love. It was an alliance between two influential families, sealed with champagne toasts and contractual clauses. Penelope knew it. Ethan did too. Neither of them cared, or at least, they pretended not to care. But something in Ethan was restless. Since sending the invitation to Sophia, out of impulse, anger, or perhaps a disguised nostalgia, he felt a gnawing unease. Why did she still matter so much? Why did her name still burn like an ember beneath his skin? It was Penelope who had found an old photo of Sophia online, in a report about a public school in rural Texas. "Looks like your ex became a school teacher. A noble choice," she'd said with irony. Ethan didn't respond. He merely requested her name be added to the guest list. "Invite her," he told the organizer, "for formality." But it wasn't formality. It was something darker. He wanted her to see what he had become: the empire, the woman by his side, the life that would have been hers if she had stayed. Only, he didn't know the truth. He believed Sophia had left him. No one ever told him she was forced to go. He stood up, walked to the bar, poured himself a whiskey, and watched the sunset through the panoramic window. The landscape was beautiful, golden, and vast, and he felt small against it. The sound of footsteps in the hallway alerted him. It was Mrs. Sterling, his mother, always impeccable, always controlling. "Everything is ready for the gala dinner," she said dryly. "And I expect you to maintain focus. The Hayes family is strategic for our businesses." "Of course," he replied, the automated response. But as he turned back to the glass, something was stirring within him, a feeling he couldn't name. He didn't know it yet, but the eyes he had been searching for all these years were just hours away. And they weren't coming alone with memories. They were coming with 3 little living mirrors of the truth. The unveiling. The ballroom was decorated like a modern fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers reflected golden light onto finely set tables. Important guests circulated with glasses in hand and rehearsed smiles on their faces. Social press photographers were everywhere. The pre-wedding reception for Ethan Stone and Penelope Hayes was the event of the year. But all of it felt artificial, like a play whose script no one truly felt. Penelope posed for photos, laughing with high society friends. Ethan stood near the bar, looking at his watch, as if waiting for something, or someone. And then, the doors opened. Silence. A dense, almost reverent silence. All eyes turned toward the entrance, and there was Sophia. She wore a simple, elegantly cut navy dress that highlighted the quiet strength of her posture. Her brown hair fell in soft waves, and her eyes... her eyes were serene, but sharp as ancient blades. But it wasn't her who caused the real impact. It was the 3 boys at her side. Liam, Elijah, and Noah walked around her, dressed in light suits, their faces serious and curious. They were a living copy of Ethan as a young man. It was impossible not to notice, impossible not to compare. A murmur spread through the room like wildfire on dry straw. Ethan froze. The glass almost slipped from his hand. His heart hammered. His eyes, which rarely showed emotion in recent years, now trembled. He didn't know what was more overwhelming, seeing Sophia after so many years, or seeing those small faces that seemed to silently scream. "We are a part of you." Penelope compressed her lips, feeling the ice of humiliation crawl up her back. Mrs. Sterling, in a corner of the room, turned pale as marble. The past, which she had worked so hard to bury, had just walked in through the front door. Sophia walked steadily, her gaze unwavering. Every step was a silent response to the pain she had suffered, the injustice she had swallowed for years. She wasn't there to beg for anything. She was there to show she survived, and that she didn't come alone. When she stopped in front of Ethan, time seemed to stand still. The two stared at each other for long seconds, as if an entire lifetime passed between them without words, only the furious pounding of 2 still wounded hearts. "Ethan," she said, with a slight nod of her head. "Sophia," he replied, swallowing hard. "These are my sons." She said no more, offered no explanation, no justification. Their presence said it all. The room, once loud with fake laughter and vain toasts, was now in absolute silence. The words, "These are my sons," resonated in Ethan's mind like thunder in a cathedral. His eyes darted from the boys' faces to Sophia's, searching for a denial, a relief, a lie. Anything that would say it's not what it looks like. But it was. It was exactly what it looked like. Interactive question. Sophia has made her entrance. If you were Penelope, the fiancée, what would be your immediate, most calculated move in this social and financial showdown? Comment below. The father's fury. He slowly backed away, stunned, guiding Sophia toward a side lounge, away from the stairs. The children stayed with a kind waiter, under the watchful care of Elijah, always the most responsible of the 3. As soon as the door closed behind them, Ethan turned, his expression a mix of rage, disbelief, and something deeper, pain. "Are they mine?" he asked in a low, tense voice, as if each word were a glass cup about to shatter. Sophia did not back down. She looked him straight in the eyes, holding the weight of 1,000 lonely nights, her children's fevers, the silent birthdays, the questions she could never answer. Yes, they are yours. Why didn't you tell me? He exploded, stepping forward. You had 3 children of mine and hid it from me. I went 12 years without knowing I was a father. 12 years, Sophia. She felt her throat constrict, but she did not cry. Not here. Not for him. Do you think I chose this? You disappeared. You didn't answer. You didn't respond. Your mother threw me off the ranch like garbage. I had no choice. The name, your mother, hit him like a punch. For a moment, Ethan seemed to waver. He knew Mrs. Sterling was controlling, cold. But would she go that far? My mother threw you out. That's impossible. She never told me anything. Of course she didn't tell you, or let you know. I tried. I wrote letters. I called. I went all the way there, pregnant. She had me escorted out like a thief. I was humiliated. Ethan! Sophia's voice trembled, but her stance remained firm. He brought a hand to his mouth, running his fingers over his lips, trying to process. The ground seemed to sink beneath his feet. An entire segment of his life had been built on a lie, or worse, on a cruel omission. Why did you come now? He asked, softer. Sophia took a deep breath. It took her a few seconds to reply. Why did you send me an invitation? And because they have the right to know where they come from. And you have the right to look them in the eyes and decide who you want to be from now on. Those words pierced Ethan's pride like sharp arrows. For the first time in years, he had no comeback, only questions, and a regret that was beginning to grow within him like a weed. But he didn't know the whole truth yet. He still didn't know that his mother was hiding more than letters, nor that his fiancée had plans that went far beyond a wedding. The letter in the closet, the night fell over Dallas with a clear, starry sky. But Ethan's heart was far from calm. After the confrontation with Sophia, he went up to his suite and, for the first time in years, opened the old wooden box hidden deep in his closet. Inside, he kept memories he had tried to bury, faded photos, scribbled love notes, and a blue scarf she had left the last time they met. His fingers touched a particular photograph, the two of them at 18, riding a horse, laughing, covered in dust, but with looks that said everything. The past returned then, like a whirlwind. Dallas, 12 years ago. The sun was setting behind the hills, tinging the sky golden as Sophia ran barefoot through the fields of the stone ranch. Ethan followed, laughing, until he caught her in the old barn, where the smell of hay mixed with young skin and eternal promises. I'm going to marry you, Sophia, even if my mother disinherits me. You say that now, but what about when they pressure you? When you have to choose between me and your family? Always you. I love you. They kissed right there, with the urgency of those who feel time slipping through their fingers. It was that night she became pregnant, and it was that same week everything fell apart. Mrs. Sterling, the family matriarch, observed everything from the shadows. She already suspected the relationship, but it was upon finding a pregnancy test hidden in Sophia's room and intercepting a letter she was writing to Ethan that she decided to act. What she couldn't allow was the stone name to be tainted with common blood. She summoned Sophia for a formal meeting. She poured tea as if they were old friends, but there was venom in every word. You don't belong in our world, girl. You are a distraction. And now, with this pregnancy, if you have any sense, you will disappear before I take it upon myself to make you. Sophia tried to resist. She cried, pleaded to see Ethan, but she was forbidden. The next day, she was expelled with 2 suitcases, a threat, and a check that she tore up at the ranch gate. She returned to Austin, humiliated, carrying 3 lives in her womb that would be her strength from then on. Cut to the present. Ethan, sitting on the bed, listened to the sound of his own accelerated breathing. Everything made sense now, or almost everything. But why would his mother do something so cruel? Why hide something so essential? He got up with tear-filled eyes, grabbed his phone, but didn't dial. Instead, he walked toward the safe in the corner of the room. He opened it, and inside he found a drawer with letters. Letters addressed to him, never delivered. All signed Sofia Ramirez. A battle of matriarchs. The stone mansion had long, cold corridors, and in one of them, Sofia walked with firm steps. After the tense reception the night before, she knew she would be confronted, and it didn't take long. One of the staff discreetly whispered that Mrs. Sterling was waiting for her in the tea room. Sofia took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come, but this time, she was not a pregnant, frightened young woman. She was a poised, mature woman, with 3 sons in whom she saw every day the strength life had demanded of her. And unlike the past, she had nothing to lose now. Mrs. Sterling was seated, as impeccable as ever, with a pearl necklace Sofia remembered well. Her fingers were interlaced in her lap, and her gaze was a sheet of steel. "I see you had the nerve to return." Sofia did not reply. She sat across from her, with the calm of one who knows pain better than her own skin. "Don't delude yourself into thinking Ethan will welcome you with those boys," Mrs. Sterling said, pausing with loaded contempt before pronouncing the word boys. "He has a future, a marriage, a reputation to protect." Sofia slightly tilted her head, studying every wrinkle on the face of the woman who destroyed her past. "You took from me once, but you won't take from me again. These children are stones, whether you accept it or not, and they have the right to know who they are, even if you prefer them to disappear." Her tone was serene, but razor sharp. For the first time, Mrs. Sterling shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Control was slipping through her fingers like dry sand, and she knew it. "You should have disappeared as I asked. I disappeared. I cried alone. I gave birth alone. I raised them alone. But now I'm back, not for you or for Ethan. I came back for them, because they deserve to know the truth. And you're going to have to face what you did." Mrs. Sterling tried to maintain her composure, but her eyes were trembling. For a second, something, guilt perhaps, flickered in the depths of her pupils, but she stood up with rehearsed dignity and walked to the window. "They will never be welcomed here." Sofia also stood, with a strength born of sleepless nights, of fevers calmed with prayers, of words swallowed out of fear and love. "They don't need to be welcomed. They already belong. You just haven't understood it yet." And she walked out, without looking back, leaving behind a trail of silence that screamed louder than any argument. The unspoken bond. At breakfast the next day, the stone mansion was quieter than usual. Ethan came downstairs without his usual suit. He wore only a white shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His steps stopped when he heard laughter coming from the back garden. Laughter, actually, that he knew from somewhere. It was light, almost musical. Stepping outside, he saw the 3 boys playing soccer with one of the groundskeepers. They went with the same wild energy he remembered having as a child. But what truly caught his attention was how Liam kicked the ball with his left foot. Precise, exact, just as he had done in school. Ethan stood there, immobile, unnoticed, or so he thought, observing. At one point, Elijah fell to the ground. Noah immediately ran, worried, and helped him up. The gesture was so automatic, so protective, that a lump formed in Ethan's throat. He remembered when, as a boy, he held his younger brother's hand every time he cried. A familiar reflex. Later, in his office, he took out an old photo of himself at 5. He compared it to one Mrs. Sterling had taken of the triplets during the reception. The resemblance was absurd. The eyes, the nose, even the way they smiled sideways. His blood ran through those veins. There was starting to be no doubt, but Ethan still needed proof. He discreetly called a lab. He requested a DNA test. He bagged a glass Noah had used and submitted it under the name of a supposed employee. It was the last vestige of a man who still trusted data more than feeling. Still, something inside him was already breaking. That night, he went up to the terrace with a glass of wine. He sat and looked up at the sky, and for the first time in many years, he wept. Not as a powerful man, but as a betrayed son, a father who was perhaps robbed, and a man who now saw his own life slipping through his hands. In the darkness, he heard soft footsteps. Sophia was there, silent. He didn't see her, but he knew it was her, because only she could make the air denser without uttering a single word. "They have a lot of you," she finally said. "I'm starting to see that," he replied without turning around. "What else did they take from me, Sophia? What else did they hide from me?" She didn't answer. She only sat beside him. And the two remained in silence, looking at the same sky, laden with stars. And everything that was never said. Call to action. Would you have helped Eleanor after what she did to you? Let me know in the comments. Also, please share this video with a friend who loves incredible stories. The second betrayal. Penelope Hayes was not foolish. No matter how much Ethan tried to maintain his composure, she knew him well enough to recognize the signs, the delays, the lost glances, the prolonged silences during dinners. But what truly made her understand she was about to lose everything was a scene she witnessed from her guest room window that chilled her to the bone. Ethan kneeling down to tie Noah's shoelace, while the other two boys hugged him from behind. That was no longer a suspicion. It was a bond. It was affection. It was fatherhood. Without wasting time, Penelope hired a private investigator. She wanted more than assumptions. In less than 4 hours, the man returned with documents, school records, and even a DNA test result Ethan had secretly commissioned. The result was clear, 99.9% genetic compatibility. With the envelope in her hands, Penelope did not cry. She did not scream, she smiled. The next day, Ethan arrived at his office and found her sitting at his desk, impeccable, with the open envelope in front of her. "Congratulations, Dad," she said, crossing her legs. "They are indeed yours." Ethan swallowed hard. There was nothing left to hide. "Penelope, you don't have to explain anything to me. Let's be adults. We have a contract. We have a wedding in 3 weeks. And we have many eyes on us. This marriage was never about love, but it was always about power. And if you break this agreement now, Ethan, I swear I will destroy you. And the little school teacher too." Before he could respond, his cell phone vibrated, a notification from a popular digital magazine. As he opened it, the world seemed to spin. "Scandal among the Stones. Ex-girlfriend appears with children and intimate photos from the past. Who is the woman threatening one of Mexico's most powerful weddings?" The article was filled with old photos. One showed Ethan and Sophia kissing in the ranch barn. Another, her pregnant, still a teenager, in front of a rural school. Photos that should never have seen the light of day. Ethan felt rage rise in him like slow fire. He looked at Penelope. "You did this. I only protected what's mine. Don't you understand yet that you won't escape me?" But what Penelope didn't know was that Ethan was no longer the man who kept silent. Fatherhood didn't just touch him. It transformed him. And as the storm exploded in the press and on social media, Sophia received the news on her cell phone screen, trembling, with her sleeping children beside her. She read the headlines, saw the photos, and thought the past had finally caught up with her. Not to heal her, but to destroy her again. The public confession. The silence of the early morning enveloped the stone mansion like a dense spider web. Ethan was in his office, but his eyes were not reading the contracts on the desk. They were reading the subtext of his own life. The image of Sophia humiliated in the tabloids, the eyes of his children reflecting disappointment and fear. All of it weighed more than any inheritance. That's when he decided. He took the envelope with the DNA result, a copy of the published article, and Sophia's old letter he had found days earlier. He walked up the stairs with firm steps and entered Mrs. Sterling's room without knocking. She was sitting in front of the mirror, removing her pearl earrings, when she saw him enter, and she knew instantly that he was not the same Ethan. "You knew," he said in a steady voice. "You always knew, and you lied to me. You hid the letters. You made me believe she had abandoned me. You stole a family from me." Mrs. Sterling stood up, her face paling. "I did what was best for you. That girl would have ruined your life, tied you to a small destiny. Small. You tied me to an empty castle, surrounded by money and loneliness. You took away the only thing that truly made me smile. You didn't protect my future, Mom. You destroyed it." The words echoed in the walls. Heavy, irrecoverable words. For the first time, Mrs. Sterling fell silent, but Ethan didn't stop. "You can keep hiding behind your last name, but I won't. I'm going to live my truth, and my truth has a name. Sophia. And 3 wonderful sons I will never leave alone again." "Are you going to throw everything away for her?" "No, I'm taking back what you tried to erase." The next morning, Ethan showed up unannounced at the press conference Penelope had organized about the wedding of the year. Before the cameras, the partners, the elite, and a Penelope with a frozen smile, he took a deep breath and said, "This wedding is canceled. And for those who are selling lies to the press, here is the truth. I am a father, and it is the most important thing that has ever happened to me." Penelope tried to react, but the flashes were all focused on him. And in that instant, Ethan was no longer the heir. He was no longer the prisoner. He was a father. He was a man. He was free. Too late. The article had been cruel. It wasn't enough to expose their intimate history. The tabloids even insinuated that Sophia had used her children to try to infiltrate the Stone family. The old photos, the poisonous headlines, the social media comments, it all hurt. But what hurt the most was Ethan's silence. He had disappeared. Since the press conference, not a message, not a call, not an explanation. Sophia watched her sleeping children huddled together on the motel bed. They had cried. They didn't understand why the school called to say they could no longer accept the public exposure. They didn't know why their classmates stopped talking to them. But Sophia did. Sitting on the edge of the bed, silent tears falling, she made a decision that broke her inside. She would leave, just like the first time. Only now, she wasn't running from Ethan. She was running from the fear of being hurt again. The next morning, she woke the children with a fake smile and packed bags. "We're going on a new trip, my loves, to a place where no one knows our names." Liam, the most sensitive, frowned. "What about Dad?" She froze. She took a deep breath. "Dad is busy now, but he will always be in your hearts." As she called a taxi to the airport across town, Ethan finally dialed her number. Too late. The phone rang. No answer. Desperate, he rushed to the motel, where the receptionist only said, "Ms. Sofia Ramirez left less than an hour ago, with 3 children." The sense of déjà vu hit Ethan like a punch. Again. She was leaving. And this time, he couldn't blame anyone but himself. He raced to his car. He drove like a maniac to the airport. He skidded to a stop at the curb. He ran through the corridors as if his life depended on it. And it did. He asked for her at every counter, at every gate. And then, in the distance, he saw them crossing the security checkpoint. Sophia turned for a second, and their eyes met. It was only an instant. She hesitated. The children looked at him too, but then the system called for boarding, and she turned her face away. This time, it was she who did not return. Ethan screamed her name. He tried to run toward the boarding area, But it was too late. The doors closed, and with them, his heart also closed. A new beginning. The days that followed were made of emptiness. The mansion, once filled with obligations, guests, and appointments, was now silent. Ethan didn't answer calls, didn't check emails, didn't leave. He only walked from room to room, as if searching for something he no longer knew where to find. In the living room, the toys the children had forgotten remained on the sofa. A little red car, a children's book, a doll with a broken ear. Small things, but now they weighed tons. Ethan touched them as if they were sacred artifacts, as if each object carried the last traces of their presence. He no longer wept as before. Now it was a dry, silent weeping, made of burning memories. He looked out at the terrace and remembered Sophia smiling under the sunset, her hand brushing his, that look that said everything without saying anything. On the morning of the 4th day, without telling anyone, he took his car and drove to the family's old, abandoned ranch. It was there that he and Sophia used to meet in secret, there where they fell in love, where they dreamed, where they believed the world fit in each other's arms. Arriving, he found the gates rusty, the weeds tall, but the essence of the place still pulsed. He walked among the trees he knew by heart. Wild sunflowers still grew in the corner of the field, like a memory that time failed to erase. He entered the old barn, the smell of wood, hay, and history enveloping him like a hug. There, years ago, he had promised eternal love. There, he had watched her dance barefoot, laughing, free, and there she had also cried upon learning that his mother would never accept them. Ethan knelt on the dirt floor, running his hands over his eyes. Everything he was now was here, a man in pieces, surrounded by the ghosts of a life he almost had, and almost lost forever. He took out the letter Sophia had handed him before leaving. Reading those words now was torture and redemption at the same time. She had trusted him, and he had acted too late. "Forgive me, Sophia," he whispered, his voice broken. "Forgive me for not looking for you sooner, for letting fear be bigger than love." The wind blew through the barn cracks, lifting fine dust, as if time itself were listening. There, among ruins and memories, Ethan found a certainty. He couldn't let it end like this. If there was still a chance, however small, he would fight. For the first time in days, he stood up with purpose. And when he left the barn, he didn't take only memories, but a promise. He would bring Sophia and his children back, even if he had to cross the world to do it. The sunflower's vow, the days following the re-encounter in the sunflower field, were unlike anything Sophia had ever experienced. For the first time, she woke up without fear of the future. There was a new rhythm to her routine, one that included Ethan making breakfast with the children, laughing at Noah's antics, and helping Liam with his schoolwork. They moved to a cozy house in the quiet part of the city. It wasn't a mansion, but it was a home. Ethan had left the stone mansion, determined to build something new with Sophia, something real, something just for the two of them. Sophia, for her part, returned to teaching. Her image had been cleared, thanks to a public retraction Ethan made on national television. He owned his mistakes, exposed the manipulations, and apologized to the woman he had once loved in secret. Now, he loved her in plain sight. The children flourished with their father's presence. Each, in their own way, found the missing piece in Ethan's love. Noah, who was once restless, was now calmer. Elijah smiled more, and Liam, ever sensitive, slept hugging a teddy bear Ethan gave him, wearing a miniature shirt just like his father's. But the biggest surprise came from where Sophia least expected it. One cloudy afternoon, Mrs. Sterling appeared at the door of the new house. She was alone, her face marked not only by age, but by the weight of her decisions. She held a small wooden box in her hands. Sophia hesitated, but opened the door. "I didn't come to justify myself," Mrs. Sterling said, her voice trembling. "I came to ask for forgiveness. Of you, of Ethan, of my grandchildren. I destroyed more than a love. I destroyed a family. And now I don't want to leave this world without trying to mend a little of what I broke." Sophia listened in silence. She didn't smile, but she didn't deny her entry either. In the living room, Mrs. Sterling opened the box. There were letters Sophia never knew she had written, photos of her young self with Ethan, and a necklace with a locket she thought she had lost. "I kept everything, out of fear, out of arrogance, out of a misunderstood love for my son. But now I understand that true love is letting go. And I ask you, allow me at least to meet the boys." Sophia looked at her. There was no trust yet, but there was empathy and a bit of compassion. "They have the right to know their grandmother, but the woman you show them is your choice." From that day on, little by little, a new story began to be written. A story where the ghosts of the past gave way to bridges, where pride gave space to healing, and where love finally stopped bleeding, to flourish. The sky was clear, the wind was soft, and the sunflower field looked hand-painted by God. It was almost incredible how that place, which was once the scene of bitter goodbyes, now transformed into the sweetest stage of all. A year had passed since the re-encounter, and right there in that golden field, love was waiting for its "I do." The chairs were arranged in simple rows, adorned with white ribbons and wildflowers. Friends, family, and children from the community occupied the seats, with smiles on their faces and tears in their eyes. It was more than a wedding. It was a celebration of life that refused to surrender, of hope that refused to die. At the altar, Ethan stood, dressed in a light suit, his hair slightly windswept. But what drew the most attention was his gaze, a look filled with tenderness, healed guilt, and new promises. The eyes of a man who learned to love not with grandiosity, but with presence. And then she appeared. Sophia walked barefoot down the dirt aisle between the sunflowers. The dress was light, flowing, with lace details that seemed lovingly drawn. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun. Her face was serene. But the most exciting part was who walked with her. Liam, Elijah, and Noah, one on each side, holding her hand. All three wore light clothes, with little suspenders, and smiles as wide as the sky. They weren't just escorting their mother down the aisle. They were giving her away, and giving themselves away with her to something greater. When Sophia arrived in front of Ethan, there was a second of silence. A different silence. It wasn't absence. It was reverence. As if the universe held its breath to witness that moment. "Are you sure?" she whispered, a playful glint in her eyes. "I'm more sure of you than I am of myself," he replied, his eyes filled with tears. The officiant barely managed to finish the ceremony before the tears started falling. When Ethan said, "I do," his voice cracked. When Sophia answered, the whole field seemed to sigh. And when they kissed, the children shouted in unison, "Long live Mom! Long live Dad!" The party was made of dancing, folk music, and sincere laughter. Mrs. Sterling even appeared for a moment, shyly sitting in the back, with a sunflower in her hands. It was the highest forgiveness she knew how to offer. And for now, it was enough. As evening fell, with their feet bare and their children asleep on a rug under the old barn tree, Sophia leaned into Ethan's lap. He stroked her hair in silence. "Everything I lost is here now," he said. She smiled. "And everything I dreamed of learned to wait." And there, between the roots of the past and the flowers of the future, love did not find its end, but the beginning it always deserved. Final call to action. I invite you to leave your opinion on this incredible story in the comments. What was the most significant moment of redemption for you? If you liked it, share it and subscribe to the channel to support our work. Another story is appearing on your screen that will probably move you just as much. Don't miss it.